I'd swear that is White Pony behind me there. The camera just, I guess, doesn't like how grey that album cover is. But anyway, hello, lovely people. Welcome to Ari Talks About Music. I'm Ari, and today I'll be reviewing the new Deftones album, Private Music. Private Music is the 10th album from the California alternative metal band Deftones, who, since their debut album Adrenaline all the way back in 1995, have been slowly but surely building up one of the most prolific and legendary discographies in metal, having released multiple classics in the world of alternative metal since then, and they really are showing no signs of slowing down anytime soon, with even some of their more recent albums still being among their absolute best, which ultimately I think solidifies them as definitely one of the just greatest bands in the metal scene, not only now, but to be honest, ever, just given how hard they've always been to pin down, given that they were kind of grouped together with the rest of the nu metal bands back in the late 90s and early 2000s when that genre was at its peak. However, even the kind of music they were making back at the time just doesn't really quite fit in with the nu metal label, and especially given how well not only their music from their early days has aged, but just with how well the band's sound has aged with time as well, with them still releasing incredible albums to this day, which is not something that can really be said for most of the nu metal bands on the scene at the time. And then, of course, just their incredible blend of metal and then much dreamier genres like shoegaze and even sometimes some hints of dream pop in there too. I think all of that ultimately makes them a band who exemplify the term alternative metal, and I think that that incredible blend of metal and shoegaze is something they are still doing incredibly well even on their new album, with this project having not only some of their heaviest but also dreamiest material yet. And I feel like Deftones truly are one of the only bands that can pull off such two vastly different styles on the same project so well. Private Music is off to an absolutely insane start, with My Mind is a Mountain kicking off with one of the heaviest riffs in the entire Deftones discography. And I just really love the way that this song cuts to the chase and hits you in the face pretty much immediately. And then from there, I think that much like a lot of the Deftones catalogue, this song just does an incredible job at walking that fine line between metal and shoegaze, with just the insane amount of distortion and dissonance in their guitar playing all being used, I think, incredibly well. Locked Club has some absolutely incredible guitar tones with this almost doom metal leaning kind of sound. I think that in the verses, the vocal melodies are just a little bit lacking in terms of harmony. However, during the chorus, Chino Marino shows off some of the absolute best vocals I've ever heard him do, with such intensity and such passion, but still in typical Deftones fashion managing to sound so spacious and airy at the same time. Ectasis opens with an absolutely fantastic bass line that just immediately starts building all this tension. And then I also love the way this incredible chugging guitar riff comes in before the insane vocals as well, at which point just about everything on the song is just completely playing at full force all at the same time. And then you have Infinite Source, which is just an incredible full-blown metal shoegaze fusion, with just an absolutely insane amount of distortion on the guitars that, combined with how heavy they are, just creates this incredible sound. And then, of course, Chino's vocals are again just quite like nothing I've really ever heard before, as he manages to pull off such a dreamy vocal style in a way that almost feels like it shouldn't work with how heavy the song is, but I think just the pure atmosphere of it makes it work, and on the whole just makes the song feel so epic. And then, of course, just the very brief guitar solo that closes the song, despite how short it is just, I think, one of the most insane moments on the whole album. Souvenir is a song I do find quite interesting, given its lack of focus on atmosphere or building up to a climax. At least for its first half, it sticks to a more traditional verse-chorus-verse structure, and I do think that because of that, it does end up sticking out quite a bit. Instrumentally, however, it's still absolute killer from start to finish, and then in the latter half of the song, I think that that's where the focus on atmosphere really starts to shine, just with the incredible slow building of layers, which overall just gives it this big sense of atmosphere and tension, which I absolutely love. CXZ is just a completely full-on and insane metal track, with guitar playing that doesn't even for a second hold back, as well as the vocals being sung with so much pain and so much passion. I do also like the slightly less fuzzy guitar licks on this song, with them, I think, being a fantastic addition not only because they sound so heavy, but also it does just make a little bit of a change to hear a very good guitar sound that isn't just completely covered in reverb. I Think About You All the Time is a really nice and much softer song that I feel like is much needed after just the sheer insanity and dissonance of the previous track. The very soft guitar playing, I think, is absolutely incredible, and I think that Chino does a great job at toning down his voice to match the vibe of this song a lot more. It does then go into a much louder and heavier outro, but not in a way that at all feels overbearing, because despite its loudness and heaviness, it's still very slow, and in the end, I think actually ends up feeling like one of the most epic and almost inspiring moments on the whole album. Milk of the Madonna is then just one of the absolute wildest songs on the project. Again, just with a completely insane guitar riff that just does not hold back. And I also absolutely love Chino Marino's vocals on this one, as he just completely goes for it. And for pretty much the whole runtime of the track, he never gives anything other than his absolute loudest. Cut Hands sees Deftones going back to their slightly more rap metal style of the late 90s, which, as popular as that style was around the time that albums like Around the Fur were coming out, and I do think it does kind of work on those kinds of projects. I feel like at this stage, not only in their own personal career, but just in the evolution of metal music as a whole, that I feel like we should be kind of past doing rap metal by now, given that it's a genre fusion that only works in very specific circumstances. And to be fair, I don't think that they're doing an awful job at it on this track at all. I just find that on the whole, as a part of the album and just as a part of the Deftones discography, it really does stick out quite a bit. But I still do really appreciate a lot of the more standard metal moments on this song, as they still manage to continue to deliver some of their absolute heaviest material in a long time. Metal Dream then, despite its name, starts to explore the much more shoegaze side of the band's sound, with this absolutely incredible wall of noise created by the insane distortion on the guitar playing, but still at the same time managing to sound so beautifully melodic. I also especially like the drumming on this track being an instrument that I think just for whatever reason sounds particularly good here. And then Departing the Body shows off Deftones' absolutely incredible ability to close an album like no one really can, with this one being absolutely one of the most atmospheric songs on the album, having much less of an emphasis on the guitar playing, but instead focusing much more on just the overall feel and the texture of the song. But I will say that the guitar solo at the end of this track is absolutely fantastic, easily one of my favourite moments on the whole album. It really is hard to believe that this band is now 30 years on from their debut, given how they are still releasing career-defining albums like this that showcase some of the heaviest material they have ever done, and somehow they have managed to completely avoid the typical heavy metal band pipeline of just slowly watering down their sound as they get older, which in a way it almost seemed like they were going to go down that path at one point. With I think both Gore and Ohms, while being both perfectly good albums, they are definitely a clear step below from 2012's Koino Yokan, which is still to this day my all-time favourite Deftones album. But if there's anything that Private Music shows us, it's that Deftones are clearly incapable of letting that happen to them. And even for a band that have been going for as long as they have been, they are still capable of releasing career-defining albums even this late in the band's history, which is why I'll be giving this album an 8 out of 10. Thank you so much for watching this review. Please be sure to listen to this album yourself and tell me your thoughts below. Please leave a like if you liked the video, and please leave a dislike if you didn't like the video, and remember to stay hydrated.